I saw this back towards the end of 2024, but it's only now getting a wide release. The events that frame the story of September 5 are fairly well known and have been the focus of films more than a couple of times. So does this one create any compelling reasons to revisit a story from over 50 years ago? During the 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich, Germany, an American sports broadcasting team must adapt to live coverage of the Israeli athletes who are being held hostage by a terrorist group. So, if you didn't know, during the Munich Olympics in 1972, terrorists held some Israeli athletes hostage in their rooms within the Olympic Village, leading to a nail-biting several hours. Now, this movie takes the perspective of ABC Sports, the only TV outlet that was broadcasting live from Munich during the games. We get to watch the events play out through the viewpoints of those inside the control room, which in its own sense was a tense and anxiety-filled experience. Now, this stars Peter Sarsgaard, John Magaro, Ben Chaplin, and Leonie Benesch. And this is also a German production, so it's an interesting frame of reference given that these tragic events took place in Germany, especially after the country was working so hard to distance itself from its previous Olympic hosting experience that involved a vicious little man with a tiny mustache. And while this may sound like it's a historical drama, it's a harrowing thriller, one that kept me on the edge of my seat with growing dread and anticipation, even though I already knew the outcome of the story. Now, this is somewhat of a slow burn story, at least until a point. The opening scenes give us a feeling of unease and slight anxiety, but that's mainly from the ongoing pressure of just producing a live TV broadcast of multiple sporting events happening simultaneously across several venues, all then in a foreign country that's on a completely different time schedule than the American viewing audience. Now, the patient storytelling, it doesn't drag out long before it jumps right into the meat of the story. And that's when the drama kicks into full gear. Not only from the hostage situation, but also because of the moral and ethical dilemmas that are raised inside the broadcast booth. Some of the issues raised seem like common sense, and when they were said out loud, it made me think, well, duh. I mean, that's obviously a huge concern, right? But I didn't ever consider it before, which then worked to increase the discomfort for me and make the characters and their actions very sympathetic. Now, while Peter Sarsgaard is top billed, John Magaro is really the star of this. He's the one calling the shots within the control booth, choosing when to go to certain cameras and how long to sit on something. And it is a massive amount of controlled chaos that just translates into chilling emotions and situations. When the characters would hold their breath in anticipation of just something terrible happening, I found myself doing the exact same thing, only experiencing relief when they did. The storytelling, it's very effective in creating engaging sequences while also not manufacturing drama just for drama's sake. The production, it has an authentic feel to it thanks to the real footage that's inserted along with newly filmed sequences. The graininess of the movie creates a historical aesthetic, complementing the costume designs, but also matching the archival footage that's used. And it's fascinating from a technical perspective, watching how all of the broadcast techniques were executed, like placing the ABC logo or maybe graphical words on the screen. Today, they're placed digitally with ease, but during that time, the process was a patiently executed art. And I loved these small touches that the film included. It didn't need to in order to convey the story, but they add authenticity, continuing to build the illusion that we're following the characters inside this booth as the events unfold. The movie is also efficient with its time, taking only 95 minutes to get us invested in the events and then showcasing the tragedy in this odd mix of compressed and real time so we can feel the pressure as it grows and arrives from several different directions. I appreciate, too, that the film doesn't shy away from mistakes that were made, both in the broadcast booth, but also by officials in sharing information and handling the crisis. The events weren't always handled in the best way, but we're privy to the rationales involved in a lot of the decision-making, so we can understand the mindsets and the motivations, and then make our judgments. There were several moments when I was shaking my head in disbelief that events were unfolding the way that they were, and I chalked that emotion up to how engaged I was with the storytelling. I mean, I was fully invested, and I was inching towards the edge of the theater seat as each harrowing sequence came, and then was replaced by something even more stressful. Now, from a historical standpoint, I'm sure some of the elements and exchanges are dramatized to make the story more effective, but it also doesn't come across that large portions were fabricated just to put butts in seats. I mean, after all, much of this was broadcast live for a ton of people to see, so if the scripting went too off the rails, people would be in an uproar since this claims to be based on true events. Now, I think what may be a frustrating point within the storytelling is that if the broadcast cameras couldn't see actions taking place, we as the audience also aren't able to see them either. In one way, it adds to the tension of the story, but it also can make us feel left out, only imagining some of the events and guessing what it looked like. Now, for a tragic story, I was fully enthralled in the presentation, even though I also knew what the final outcome would be. The direction and editing are tight, maintaining the urgency of the tragedy while also keeping us connected to the human drama taking place within the broadcast booth as the characters wrestle with showing the news from an unbiased eye and the uncertainty of broadcasting loss of life to a watching world. The acting is passionate and fierce, with John Magaro delivering a commanding performance. The aesthetics of the filmmaking, from costumes to technical executions, they all work together to deliver a stressful account of this human tragedy. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and while barely any violence is shown, we are given some detailed descriptions of horrible actions. I give September 5 4.5 out of 5 couches. So have you seen this one yet? I would love to hear what you thought about it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.